What's up, YouTube? Laura Whitmore here. We are going to break down the June SAT test today. I'm so excited to hear from our experts that are coming on the channel. Real quick, guys, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, I come out with free content every single week to help you master the SAT. So if you're not feeling so hot about the June test and you're planning on taking another one, definitely subscribe so that you can stay on top of all the videos I release to help you guys get to your goal. I will say I didn't have too much time to research what you all thought out there. So chat, if you can let me know what you thought of this test. Was it hard? Was it easy? Was just the math hard? Was just the English easy? Or was just the English hard? Or were both halves hard? I did see some comments on our social so far, and it sounds like the general consensus from the handful of comments I read was that students feel like both sides of the test were like super massively difficult. So I'm wondering if you guys agree with me. Now, I've got two guests today on this channel. I'm very, very fortunate to have two people joining us. Will, who is a bronze tutor on strategic test prep. He is a junior at Northwestern. He scored a 1580 on his SAT. And I'm also bringing on Pranoy, who owns PM Tutoring in New Jersey. He took the test yesterday, and he's like me. He's been in the game for a couple decades, even though we don't look like it. So let me go ahead and bring these guys on. Welcome, guys.
Hi,
Thanks
Laura.
for joining. Hi. All right, so let's just get right into it. People have been commenting on our Instagram saying that this test annihilated them on both the English and the math side. So, Will, I want to start with you. You've taken the blue book test. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not alone because after finishing the test yesterday, I walked out and I was like, wow, that was probably one of the most difficult tests I've taken, like both compared to like the practice blue book test as well as like the tests I was taking when I was back in high school. I definitely think that there was maybe a slight edge to the English because usually I'm more proficient at math anyways, but I will say on both sides the difficulty really surprised me. And especially like kind of having to balance, you know, time with kind of the content of the questions. It was overall just like I feel like a very strategic game that I had to play throughout the test.
Interesting. Now, just real quick, I don't know, there's something with your mic. It's kind of going in and out a little bit. Pranoy, are you sensing? Did you get that sense? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like if it comes in and then it fades out. So I don't know if maybe you need to talk closer to the mic or what, but I just want to make sure everybody can hear you today because you've got such valuable information for us.
Is this a little bit better? Like if I talk like this?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna
perfect.
talk right into it.
Just lean right into it. Exactly. All right. What do you think, Pranoy?
Yeah, I think the test was pretty well within the scope of expected patterns. I think the reading felt about normal. One thing that I think bodes well, and I think a lot of my students, I don't have a lot of students complaining about those words were all crazy. I didn't know any of those words. Like I think there was maybe like one question where there's multiple answer choices where I just wouldn't expect most students to know the words. So I'll start with that. The words in context I didn't think were too crazy. And the grammar was also just very, very run of the mill. There was nothing like inherently tricky about really anything. We got, more of the like phrase as a transition, but I think by now, we should expect those. And I don't think it was as tricky as the one in Blue Book 11, because the one in Blue Book 11, you're looking for a contrast, and two of the phrases are contrast statements. So it really comes down to like the specifics between what we're contrasting. That wasn't the case for at least me on this June test. I will say what was more challenging, as far as the support and inference questions go, I think the inferences and support for that matter, there were just a lot of interconnected ideas within the text. So it gets really, really hard. Like this equals this equals this. And we expect to see this if like this other thing, which equals this, like, fluctuates in this direction.
It sounds like you have to make like a decision tree. Like if
Yeah, I literally was like mapping like this equals this and up here equals down there, and
Well, the funny thing is, and actually I did notice that in some of the comments, a lot, the students whose comments I read lamented that the reading passages they said were long. They said they were just big reading passages. So that kind of sounds like it makes sense to me if it's that intricate. Sounds like annotation was a big tool on the test.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Will, what did you think about the reading specifically?
I definitely agree that there were longer passages, especially the more science ones. And like coupled on top of the length was kind of the vocab that they were using. So I was having a lot of difficulty, like, trying to go through the entire thing in order. So I kind of used the strategy of like doing the first 10 questions, doing the grammar, and coming back. And I ended up flagging like a lot of questions, especially on module two, sorry. But overall, I think I kind of finished in the nick of time. So it was a lot harder than I was used to. Definitely a lot harder than what the Blue Book practice test had to offer. And I think it just took a lot of like active reading that I don't think I was ready for at 8 a.m. in the morning. But overall, it was definitely, I would say, like a little bit of a challenge.
Now, for some of the support or undermined claim questions, or the main idea, main purpose questions, did you guys find that the last sentence contained the answer at all, or was this like very unpredictable? Pranoy.
I think that
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Will. Sorry, I didn't know you were gonna start.
That's two guests. Yeah, I mean, as far as the support questions went, it was really, really text-based. Like there weren't really figures or charts or anything like that. It was all within the text, and it all related to just like terms that came earlier in the passage. So of course, still read the claim first, but there was very, very little in terms of answering the question with just the claim. And I will say, like, one thing that I've noticed recently is I feel like in a few questions, not all, but in a few questions, the answers are just sufficiently different enough where you can quickly eliminate two pretty easily. And that wasn't necessarily always the case. I feel like in the past, there's just been a bunch of question or answer choices that are dense and look and read very, very similarly, but very subtle differences. And I think the differences in the answer choices is really key, something that most students just need to start paying more attention to, because I'm just reading and I'm just like, God, there's so many pieces. But then I look at the answer choice. I'm like, okay, these two are just talking about something that's just not even in the passage. So let me just back into like these two and just see, how I can connect the dots from there. So that was a technique that I found particularly helpful on this test. But yeah, to Will's point, like there were like 6 questions that I was like 70% sure I had right. So it's usually I'm just like, there's like 2 or 3 where, I might just like, oh, I'm not really sure at all. I felt pretty confident about most of them, but like there were fewer that I felt 100% confident in than I would like.
And for those of you watching out there, just a heads up, Pranoy has a tattoo that says 1600 on his body.
I actually have Pythagorean theorem on my arm as well. Yeah. So I wore long sleeves yesterday, and it was like hot as hell out in New Jersey, but I wore long sleeves because I was like, I don't want to get in trouble for this. Like, even though Pythagorean theorem is like a formula that's given on the formula sheet. So
true. Yeah, but that just goes to show, if this guy that's this serious about the SAT that has these tattoos on his body is saying he's only 70% confident on 6 reading passages, that's no joke. That to me, that sounds like a tougher English module. I mean, the basic stuff sounded okay, the grammar, the vocab, but the reading, wow, that's so interesting. What about the note-taking questions? Will, did you have to use the bullet points on any of those rhetorical synthesis questions at the end?
Yeah, so for the note-taking questions, it was all but one that I had that did have to use like the bullet points for. I think I had never realized that it was a strategy to not have to like read the bullet points to save time. So definitely tried it out. And there was just one passage where, or like one set of bullet points where you kind of had to like read what was going on to understand, because otherwise I think there was like some wrong information in the answer choices. But other than that, I think I had a pretty easy time with the note-taking questions across both modules.
And this is why I'm so impressed with you, because, you came on our team, you've been trained, you went through that 40-hour training program, so now you know the strategies. I'm thinking to myself, how the heck did this kid get a 1580 just prepping on his own? Like, that's so impressive, because you did all that before you came to be a tutor.
I will say I wish I had all the strategies that STP had to offer in high school. It would have made my life a lot easier.
Maybe you would have had that 1600. You could get a matching tattoo with Pranoy.
There you go. Yeah,
Uh,
I will say the bullet point questions for me, I only had one on module 2, and I didn't need to read the notes for it. The bullet point questions were quite unremarkable, which was in stark contrast to the December test that, we talked about like a ton of bullet point questions and like multiple that we had to read the notes for, and even the answer choices were like worded a little weird. So I had a pretty easy time with the bullet points this time around.
Okay. So, Will, you had a bunch where you had to read the notes, right? And Pranoy, you had most of them you didn't. Is that
Most
correct?
of them,
Zero,
for
yeah.
most of them, I didn't have to. I
Oh,
only
you
had to
didn't
read
have
for
to
one.
too.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the reason why I clarify or why I wanted to clarify is for those of you that are watching that don't know this, not every test is the same. So, because it's digital, because it's adaptive, they're able to throw different questions at students. And so there's different variations or forms, if you will. So, sometimes you might have an experience in the test, and your friend sitting next to you is going to have a different experience, which it gets controversial. People start arguing about how standardized is this, and but they design the questions and they test the same concept. So theoretically, it's supposed to be similar tests in nature. Pruno, I want to go back to something you said because it finally hit me. I needed a chance to process this. There were no graph questions on the English.
There was one graph question on module 1, but it was like cake. Like it was like, literally just pick the number that like matches this set of like criteria.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What about a comparative analysis question? Where did that show up? Module 1 or module 2?
1.
Oh my God, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I
It was
hate
pretty
those
easy
on
too.
module 2.
Yeah.
It still sounded like it was a tough module 2 for the reading regardless, though, which is interesting because usually
I think I prefer figures than text support questions because because you can read the claim and then it's just like interpreting the figure, and there's only so much you can like put in a figure, versus like in the text there's like they just throw all this jargon in there and all this like interconnected stuff. Like, I mean, charts and figures exist to make the data, easier to recognize connections between. So I would argue that I think I would have preferred if there were more, figures and tables and graphs and whatnot.
yeah, I feel the same way. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the math a little bit. So, how useful was Desmos on this test for you, Will?
I am so mad that I didn't have it when I took the paper SAT back in high school. Like I think if I couldn't use it for a question, I would at least try like to use it in every way possible. I think I had to become like pretty creative with like how I was like using the different tools, but like knowing how to do regression, like understanding all the little tips and tricks that like Desmos has to offer definitely saved me a lot of time in the test. Especially for module 1, I think I sat there with like 10-15 minutes left and I didn't know what to do with myself because Desmos just made my job pretty easy.
Wow, that's great to hear. Did you run any regressions?
I did. If I could, I would try to. Even if I like couldn't, I was like trying my best to like find these points and plot everything. Regressions, I think, is like has been so useful, and there's so many different ways to do it too. So definitely, like even on the test, I was like discovering new ways to use those strategies to like help me, double, triple check my answers and like finding the correct answer choice and like different methods to double check myself.
Yeah, and I'm reading some of the comments right now. So Gorman, which hi Gorman, I saw some of your comments on our channel. Thanks for watching. He said math module 2 is time consuming compared to Blue Book, and then Saba said math module 1 was amazing like honey, but module 2 was hell. So what is the deal with module 2? I mean, Pranoy, what did you now? Pranoy, keep in mind you have 20 years experience and a 1600 tattoo on your body. Put yourself in the shoes of a 17-year-old. Do you agree with this? Do you think that, comparatively, against the blue books, this was a harder math module too?
I would say there were some wrinkles that you had to be really, really careful about your setup for, because if you didn't get every detail and set it up perfectly, you're going to waste a lot more time. Like there were a lot more multi-step questions where you have to incorporate a couple of different factors, a couple of different concepts than you'll usually see. It's like a percent change, like layered with something else, right? Or it's like a surface area but like it's layered with like you got to recognize these aspects of things, right? And if you didn't get your setup down perfectly the first time, you would waste a lot of time. I
Mhm.
will say there were very few questions that, like, at the surface looked really intimidating. Like, I've seen questions before, and I would just think, oh my god, like all these kids are going to freak out about this. I don't think any questions like looked inherently intimidating. It's just that there were multiple levels and steps to them, and there was a lot of those questions where you just have to recognize a couple of just key details and, get your sketches right, get all the core information, because if you miss this one detail, like, you're going to spin around in circles. So I don't think it looked really crazy, but there were a lot of questions that required more intensive setup than I would imagine most people are used to.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, and honestly, RIP to the paper test, because I love the paper test. There wasn't as many questions that were multi-step, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I feel like now it's next level sometimes.
Mhm.
Well, do you agree with what Pranoy said, and do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely picking off of what Pranoy said. The math questions, like, they seem pretty at first glance, they seemed like, okay, I think you have your standard, like, algebra and, like, geometry and, like, function questions, but then you kinda, like, get into the weeds of it, and it was just, like, a level of, like, difficulty that I wasn't used to seeing on the SAT. Like,
Mhm.
at this point, I think it reminded me more of, like, competition math questions, like, the really competitive, having to be really creative with how you use, like, algebraic tools and things like that. So, definitely, it was a challenge. I think it was a stark contrast to the module 2 to module 1. I almost ran out of time in module 2, so it's definitely a harder question and a harder module, and there were also questions that I feel like I'm pretty iffy about, which I can't say has ever happened for math before, so I'm definitely really surprised.
Wow, that's a big statement. Well, and this is like a dialogue we've been having with our potential students that come to us for help is, if you feel like you're weaker on the math side of things, I think that there's a misconception where, students think that, well, oh, the math is harder on the ACT, so I'll just stick with SAT because there are some, things on the ACT side that, involve memorizing and like, advanced like trig concepts and things like that, right? However, guys, if you're watching this out there, keep in mind the ACT, the math is only weighted one third of the composite, whereas the math on the SAT is weighted one half. So sometimes, depending, it wouldn't hurt to explore an ACT to see how you do, because you may have a better chance of increasing your score on that test than the SAT. Pranoy, what do you think about that?
I agree with that statement. I mean, the ACT, and I will say, after the enhancements shortening, that it's more broad and I think a little bit more variable. So I think a lot of students kind of it is a weightage game, right? Especially with the ACT now 3 sections. It's a little less math heavy, or rather more math heavy than it was before, but yeah, still the SAT is 50-50.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, food for thought, something to keep in mind. So I guess, with that being said, what would you advise students study more? Or I guess let me rephrase the question. If you could study something more as a student before going into this June test, what would it have been? We'll start with you, Pranoy.
Yeah. So something that we put together right before the March SAT, because students were just driving me nuts, and they just look at a question, and if you couldn't figure it out in like one step, like just do one thing, then they would just either shrug their shoulders or say, "Oh, I don't know, Desmos." So one thing that I think is really important, we threw together like a "What are my first steps" drill. So I teach a lot of students that SAT math is more like physics than it is like the math in school. In physics, you get a lot of information. You have to parse out all of the details, figure out, what formulas you have available to you, and then map out, from where we're at to where we want to be. So the type of thinking involved in physics actually applies a lot more to SAT math than what you do in school does. So I think that just problem solving skill of parsing out like key information from questions, and then having your setup, because from there it's pretty straightforward. The math is nothing crazy. but the setup. So a lot of just drilling of just setups, like what sticks out, what's important, what's my first step going to be. And then from there, we don't even care about finishing the problem with many students. Just like, I want to make sure you have that first bit down.
Yeah, because that's a big thing that I hear from students is like they say, I don't know how to get started. So,
Right.
it like I tell students taking the or prepping for the SAT is kind of like dating it. Like you're dating the test. Like you go on a first date, you're just getting to know it. And then, by the fifth date, you know it pretty well. Like every session with us is like, another date with the test. And so we're both 20 years in. It's funny. I look at a problem and I see a phrase like, two real solutions. And immediately I know it's a discriminant. And that's what we want to do is empower the students to look at the question and go, oh, they said that, we need to do this,
Right.
But it does get a little bit more complicated when there's multi-steps to it, right? Will, I don't know. What do you think, Will, about all this? Do
Yeah,
you
I
have
think I have
anything-
a similar answer where I would recommend students to study the topics that are more so like non-Desmos because I think learning how to set up those problems and like think multi-step is so valuable. I think, I don't know, maybe College Board knows that like people are starting to game and like predict the questions and like really memorize them instead of like understanding the concepts behind them. So they're trying to like maybe avoid that by having these more complex problems show up on the test. And so those questions where you can't just like plug in a regression on Desmos or graph one equation where you really have to think about like a system or draw a graph before using Desmos for the calculations.
Right.
I would definitely recommend studying those questions.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I mean, I feel like the biggest pattern that I'm seeing with students' score reports, especially high flyers, is if they're missing bars anywhere, it's in the problem solving and data analysis category and the geometry and trig category. And go figure, those are the categories you really use Desmos the least. So I feel like there's a lot of concepts in there where not only it's if you don't use it, you lose it. So we have to review and refresh on those things like what does standard deviation mean? But yeah, it's just like there's some nuanced, tricky ways that they ask the questions too. Like if they give you a frequency table and then they say, what is the median number of students? And the kids are looking at the frequencies or the values, sorry, instead of the frequencies.
Yeah.
They can catch students so badly in those
Or
categories.
confusing range and standard deviation, right? Because like both of them have to do with like the spread, but like just making sure that you really, really know like the niche differences between them.
Yeah, so I think that that's kind of another element of what we do, right, Pranoy? Like not only are we teaching them to identify, based on what information's in the problem, what they need to do, but then also identify the pitfalls. Because if they can identify the pitfalls, then they're not going to fall into it, and get trapped by the SAT. All right. I guess let's do this. This will be fun. So, Pranoy, you have a super score of 1600. Have you gotten a 1600 total on one test yet?
Not flat. I have a stack of 1580s. I think I have like my mode score is 1580. I have 5 of them. I have I have one 1590, but never a flat 1600.
It's okay. You and me both. I have one 1590. So listen, I'm not there yet either. But you know what? That's kind of the fun thing. There's room to grow.
Yeah.
And Will, you had a 1580 on your SAT in high school. So let's estimate or take a guess. Like, what do you guys think you scored on this test?
I want to say because I was iffy on maybe at least 4 questions on both like English and math, maybe a max of like a 1550. I want to be like a little bit conservative because it's my first time taking a digital SAT. I have no idea, how they kind of like weight and like curve everything, but I think that's like kind of like maybe 1530 to 1550 is my range.
Okay. Pranoy, what do you think?
I would say the same thing. I got a 1540 in December, and this felt pretty similar. So I'll go with 1540.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll see. Now let's just do a quick lightning round. So, do you hide the clock or show the clock? Will?
I have to show the clock. I need to know like how much time I have left at all times.
Pranoy?
So,
how much scrap paper did you use? Will?
Maybe half a page.
Pranoy?
3 full pages.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you use a Pranoy? I'd probably be more like you. Did you use a pen or a pencil? Will?
Pencil.
Pranoy?
Pen. Dick
Oh,
pilot.
Pranoy, how
OSM.
could you, Pranoy?
Yeah.
So risky.
Yeah.
iPad, laptop, or Chromebook? Will.
Laptop.
Pranoy.
Laptop.
Okay. What was the percent of time you used Desmos on the math? Well, let's just say module 2. Will.
Maybe 80.
Okay, Pranoy.
20.
Whoa! That's so different. That's why.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming on. I had so much fun today. Heads up, everybody. We are accepting new students for the summer. Head to strategictestprep.com. You can book a consultation. And until next time, happy prepping. Bye, guys.
Take care.